Our last speaker before the Q&A is J. Kirk Wiebe. Kirk Wiebe is a retired National Security Agency whistleblower. He worked at the NSA for more than 32 years. During his tenure there, he received the Director CIA's Meritorious Unit Award and the NSA's Meritorious Civilian Service Award, the second highest distinction at that agency, for the work that he did against foreign strategic weapons systems. Now, Kirk Wiebe.
Thank you and good morning. When Norm said we're going to have a press event, and I'd like each of you to talk for about 5 minutes, that intimidates me because it makes me think about what I'm going to say. So I like to be extemporaneous if I can be, but I'd like to put a theme to it, and that is I'd like to give you a sense of what it is to be a whistleblower. You know, you live in a small organization somewhere in a huge bureaucracy, in my case NSA, and you hope you're doing good work. And I was able to do some of that with the help of my colleagues at NSA and excellent people employed by that agency in doing some very good work for this country. And I was proud to do it. But something changed with 9/11. You know what that is. And some upper management, seniors in government, thought we needed to go down another path. We needed to take a shortcut. Rather than do what the law requires, we decided we're just going to go out and collect all the information we can. As one of the Snowden View Graphs quotes, then Director General Alexander, having said, just collect it all. Did anybody see that? Right? Quoted. I think it was at GCHQ or the UK, some event, some briefing. I am now entering the phase where I'm becoming frightened. And I don't use that word very often. People have asked me, are frightened? Yes. Are we going to get out of this mess? Are we going to be able to turn the Titanic? I really don't know anymore. I was speaking to a nephew of mine, a graduate of West Point, back in the 80s. And we were kind of philosophizing and observing what's going on. And he said, Kirk, I don't see a way to prevent hitting that iceberg. I said, I don't either. Everything I look at, and I'm trying to read tectonic plates now. I'm not in the grass of bits and bytes of NSA data collected by some system in Nova Scotia. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the fact that we have a nation who is now aware of this issue like never before. Thank goodness to these fine people. Thank goodness to Edward Snowden having leaked those documents. And, you know, when I was first asked, is he a hero or is he a traitor, I think I took a breath before I answered. I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't hesitate for a fraction of a second to tell you he's a hero. Did anybody read the recent release by the New York Times of the redacted 5IG report that just came out? It's like, I don't know, 700 pages long. Did anybody go through it, just peruse it? I have not read it. It's too long. I've got too many other things to do. So I just flashed through a bunch of pages. You know what struck me? There were entire paragraphs, and are, in that report, classified top secret special intelligence. Now that means it's electronic intelligence, SI, special intelligence, at the top secret level. Information that if it got in the wrong hands would cause this nation great damage if it were to get in the hands of the enemy. I noticed paragraphs with no redactions, except that the classification of that paragraph was literally lined out. Aligned, in other words, stricken. De facto declassifying it. I pose to you this question. If we have authorities in place who are not able to legitimately classify that kind of material, that critical to knowing whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. The government puts those classifications on. They are reread and read at all the levels. The bureaucracy does multiple checks before it puts out a document. Someone came along, lined it out, said it's not classified. You and I can read it. How do you go from the most damaging to nothing in the stroke of a pen if you're even remotely doing your job correctly? Now, think a moment. Jeffrey Sterling and others have been prosecuted based on the release of what? Classified information. And the courts caved to the government's authority to do that. We are in trouble up to here. The court system, the executive using authorities with the pen, the same that created NSA, overlooking legislative and the judiciary. We've thrown out the Constitution de facto. I dare you to prove to me that we haven't. You cannot do it. We are in trouble. So I wrote on this little piece of paper a list of things that say we are no longer afraid of the police state happening. It's here in small measures and increasing measures, week by week, day by day, and it's not because there was an op-ed in the New York Times that told us. It wasn't because Jane Mayer or anyone else did a fabulous article in the New Yorker. You have to sift through a lot of little articles on page 17 of someone's media or minute 45 into an interview of someone. So it's time-consuming. But when you begin to look at the things that have happened, and I'm just going to give you a short list of things that say we're already in a police state. What is a police state? A state that has an objective. A state that has the means to oppress the people being ruled. Certainly ours meets that. We have authorities. We have the military vested in the government. The government controls the means of reconnaissance, intelligence production. So we have the tools. The only thing missing is the will to misuse them. So let's look at some of the misuses of power. I would venture to say, and there's nothing political about this, both parties own this issue. The American society, I submit, owns this issue because we've become a corrupt society. We've become a society willing to look the other way in the face of wrongdoing. So let's begin with the IRS. Everybody's familiar with the IRS and people using their power against certain subgroups that have to pay taxes. Have you heard about the police raiding the homes in Wisconsin of innocent American families, roughing them up, intimidating them because they are of the wrong political belief? There's a lot of stories about that. How about the VA using private data of whistleblowers against them to make them look like idiots or incompetent? How about the FBI collaborating with the VA to keep veterans from buying guns because they are amongst the groups most likely to become terrorists? So says the DHS. How about DOJ wiretaps of Associated Press reporters? How about John Whitehead of Rutherford Institute, who just the other day said in the early 80s, nationally, there were about 3,000 SWAT raids by SWAT teams per year in this country. That number now exceeds 80,000 a year. 80,000. Under the NDAA, the military can come to a person's door, arrest them without a warrant, without a hearing, and put them in a detention camp. Where did that come from? But it was passed by Congress. We now have tons of excess war equipment pulling into small little towns. We now have the police and Humvees and all armored personnel carriers with military-type equipment. Why? How about parallel construction that undermines your rights under the Constitution to have a fair hearing in a court of law, where the government takes data from NSA, conjures up a case against you, and then makes it look like it came out of normal FBI investigative technique, covering up the source of the data? Your lawyer won't even know the source of that information. And now we have Hillary Clinton already talking about changing or getting rid of the First Amendment of the United States and making it a campaign issue. What? So I would say to you, consider where we are. You know, they say if you don't look back at where you've been, you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, you don't know where in the hell you're going. And we just seem to be maxing out and making that a desirable process when we should be saying, wait a minute, time out, let's hold some people accountable for what's wrong, and let's call a spade a spade. And I especially worry about you as journalists, about getting caught up in the minutiae, not seeing the larger picture and where we're headed as a ship, as a nation, in terms of our rights under the Constitution. Thank you.